My wife wanted an open marriage, but I ended our relationship. She's 29 and beautiful. She told me she wanted to have relationships outside of our marriage. I planned a fancy dinner at one of our favorite restaurants. I made sure everything was perfect. I even bought her a diamond necklace. I spent almost $1,000 on it. But I didn't know I would soon need to make that money back during dinner. She seemed uneasy. Our usual relaxed conversations had a bit of tension. She seemed distracted, looking around the room like she was searching for something or someone. Normally, when she looked at me, her gaze was steady. But now it wandered without focus. Finally, after we finished the main course and had more wine, she brought up what was on her mind. I've been thinking about this for a while. I think it's time to talk about it. I stopped putting my wine glass down. What could she be talking about? Her tone had changed. It was serious, like she was thinking about something important. I started thinking about what she might say. Was she going to tell me she was ready to have a baby? We had talked about it before. We agreed to wait until we were more settled in our careers and finances. Well, we had achieved those goals. And she avoided eye contact, suggesting she had something important to tell me. When you talk about starting a family, you're happy and look at each other. But that night, something was off. Honey, we need to talk. She looked serious and said this was important. She continued, her voice trembling. I need to find out more about who I am. I think it'll help me be a better partner for you. What are you saying? I want to see other people. I want us to be okay with this. Other people? I demanded. Spell it out. My voice was louder, filled with disbelief and anger. Are you talking about dating other men? She paused, biting her lip. Yes, that might be part of it. The room spun around me. You want to date other men and expect me to be okay with it? I couldn't keep the frustration from boiling over. Andrea, how could you think this is okay? She grabbed my hand, but I pulled away. I love you, Rob. That hasn't changed. I just need to explore this part of me. Her words felt like a betrayal. No matter how calmly she tried to explain, I couldn't wrap my head around it. The noise of the restaurant faded into the background. I realized our lives might never be the same again. What on earth are you talking about, Andrea? I couldn't keep you want to have an affair and expect me to agree while you go off with other men? My words were louder than I intended. I could feel the stares of other diners burning into us. Keep your voice down, honey. She'd picked this crowded restaurant on purpose, figuring I wouldn't make a scene. She'd set me up. I was caught off guard. I felt sick. I asked why. I needed answers. What does explore yourself even mean? Are you saying you want to sleep with other men? Are you leaving me? She looked at me. Her eyes were soft but firm. No, Rob. I'm not leaving. There are reasons why I need to do this. Please believe me. I love you. You're my soulmate. I see a future with us growing old and starting a family. But right now, I'm missing things I need to find out about myself. I'm asking you to let me explore this for a few months. After that, I'll be all yours again. Her words were supposed to be reassuring, but they hung in the air between us. Could I really accept this? Could our marriage survive it? As I sat there, I couldn't believe what she was asking. This was the worst thing I could imagine. During our 5th anniversary dinner, my wife blindsided me. She said she wanted to start seeing other men. She expected me to accept this. She promised that everything would go back to normal. She even said it would make her a better wife. I was speechless. I stood up, put my napkin on the table, and drank my wine. I left without a word. She called after me, but I didn't turn around. I just left. I didn't know where I was going. I needed to get away. My head hurt. I drove aimlessly, lost in the noise of the engine and the blur of the street lights. The next morning, I woke up in my car. My head hurt, and my surroundings were unfamiliar. I got out, stretched, and looked around. I needed to use the bathroom and find a cup. I needed coffee and a plan before I could go home. I got back in the car, started the engine, and left to get coffee. I found a diner, ordered breakfast, and sat down to think. I decided that my wife couldn't have relationships with other men. It would end our marriage. Despite what she said last night, I couldn't shake the feeling that she Maybe the woman I thought I married was having a breakdown. She was dreaming up ideas that were out of touch with reality. I'm no psychiatrist. I'm just a guy who's confused. I checked my phone. I had turned it off during the night. When I turned it back on, I saw texts and missed calls from Andrea. She was worried about me. I didn't feel ready to go home or talk to her, but I knew I had to. I couldn't avoid it forever. I decided not to answer her messages just yet. After coffee and breakfast, I sketched out a plan. It was time to deal with the situation waiting for me at home. When I pulled into the driveway, Andrea rushed out. Her face was filled with worry. "Honey, where were you all night? I was so scared. I thought you might have had an accident." She tried to kiss me. I stepped back and said, "Andrea, I need to shower and freshen up. Then we need to talk." I walked past her and went to the bedroom to get out of my suit. I took a long hot shower and thought about what I needed to say. I had doubts. I had to figure out if I still had a wife or if this was she saying goodbye. Was this a test to see how committed I was? I loved her. I married her. We had a big wedding and celebrated with a trip across Europe. I'd never thought about being with another woman. I was all in, but now it seemed like she wasn't. We didn't have kids, which made things simpler. The next few days and weeks would change depending on how they unfolded. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. I grabbed a notepad and pen. I noticed Andrea sitting at the kitchen island. Her eyes locked on me. I tried to appear calm, but I was in turmoil. I sat across from her. "Andrea, please explain again why you want to pursue relationships outside our marriage." Andrea looked at me and said, "Honey, I need to feel validated as a woman. I don't feel my needs are being met. I want to explore what my needs are and see if I can find fulfillment on my own. You're uncertain about your needs and seeking to discover them." I summarized, trying to keep my tone steady. "Are you planning to step away from our relationship temporarily to find what you're looking for?" "No, honey. I won't leave. I'll remain here in our home with you," Andrea replied quickly. "I need freedom to establish my own schedule and do things at my own pace." "When do you want to start this?" "Andrea," I asked. "Well, any time would work." She responded with uncertainty. "Do you agree with my decision?" "No, I don't agree with any of this. I don't understand. You're checking out of our marriage. I need a connection. Our lives are all about work. I don't feel appreciated. I do everything for you. I've been busting my back to provide for us and build a future we dreamed about when we got married. We've nearly paid off this house. I had to address the most burning issue. Will you have relationships with other men?" "Honey, I can't say what I'll do if it feels right. I might consider it. It's not infidelity or cheating if you know about it," she replied calmly. I was furious. I needed to stay calm to handle this conversation. "Let me get this straight, Andrea. You're planning to meet other men, go out with them, and maybe even become intimate. Meanwhile, you'll still be living here with me. Is that correct?" "Honey, it's not that simple. I'm not sure yet. It sounds pretty simple to me. You're planning to do this every weekend, several times a week, every night. How far are you planning to take this?" "I have decided." But she responded, frustrated. "Why are you so focused on the details? I need to know what my life is going to look like while you're out meeting, dating, and being with your new partner." "I don't have a girlfriend," I said bitterly. "At least not yet. I need to know if you've thought about how this will affect our marriage. Have you made up your mind?" Andrea nodded but didn't answer. She hadn't considered my feelings. Then she said, "If you love me, you'll let me do this. You love me, Andrea. You won't go through with this. Unfaithfulness is a marriage breaker. My plan needs to take form. My conditions are non-negotiable. If you want to date other men, you must move out. I won't share a home with you while you date and have sex with others. You'll have to find alternative accommodation. You can stay with your friend Jessica. She's divorced and alone. If that doesn't work, you can rent a short-term apartment. You'll be responsible for all expenses." Andrea worked as a teacher and I was a chartered accountant. She also had a good income with bonuses. It seemed I wasn't meeting her needs. Andrea sensed my willingness to compromise. She made eye contact, thinking she had won. I continued, "If you want an open marriage, I'll be patient while you have affairs. Will you return home to me? Andrea, I love you. She said, I want us to build a family together. What am I supposed to do while you're out having intimate relationships with other men? Change your feelings for me when I come back. I want you to be my husband and the father of my children. She said I couldn't help but find this odd. She had already said I wouldn't let her bring her boyfriends into our home. She seemed to view that as a victory. She could enjoy her time with other men without fear of my interference. All right, you need to figure out where you're going to stay. Let me know. I want you to go to the spare bedroom. I can't share a bed with you right now. Your plan is too painful. You're leaving me. Tell me what to do, Andrea. I asked her to leave our bed. What did she expect? Did she think I'd let her run off and have affairs? Then return home to play the role of a happily married couple? Not a chance. Andrea befriended another teacher, Jessica. I suspected some of these ideas came from her. Jessica is a divorced grade 4 teacher at the same school. My wife was caught cheating on her husband with multiple partners. She was kicked out at 35. Jessica was an attractive woman with an appealing physique. She had a habit of sleeping with any man who smiled at her. I suspected Jessica was influencing Andrea to explore herself before starting a family. The reality was simple. If Andrea explored too much, there wouldn't be a family. That would be a divorce. I got up from the table and started walking away. Andrea asked, Is that all? Rob, do you want me to move out? Yeah, for now. Don't misunderstand me, Andrea. I don't want you to go through with this. We made a commitment to monogamy when we got married. You're planning to break that commitment. What do you expect me to do? Do you think I'll just sit idly by while you engage in relationships with other men? Or if you want an open marriage, I'll have the same option. Andrea was left speechless. I left before our discussion escalated. I grabbed my car keys and left. I moved out. I left the door slamming harder than usual. I briefly thought about going to Jessica's apartment and confronting her. I knew I needed to set aside my anger and frustration. Andrea had initiated this situation. She could deal with the inconvenience. I suspected Jessica might take Andrea in. I had to resist the urge to confront her on Monday morning. I was up and out. I had a lot of work to do on my plan before Andrea woke up. I didn't want to tolerate her infidelity. She seemed to have made up her mind about our marriage. I had to take action. It hurt that she believed she could engage in extramarital affairs. I didn't want her to come back with an STD or worse. I wouldn't allow it. I called my lawyer, who was also a friend. He referred me to a good divorce lawyer from his firm. I had a meeting with her that afternoon. It was a tough conversation, but my lawyer was experienced and knew our state's laws. I didn't want this divorce to be ugly. I was fine with splitting our assets 50-50. We didn't have much when we married, and we struggled to build a comfortable life together. I was willing to divide things evenly. I wasn't heartless, and battling over assets would only prolong the divorce. The assets weren't worth holding on to if it meant dealing with a cheating wife. I was waiting for proof of my wife's infidelity. The week seemed to drag on. I went to the gym every evening. Andrea was spending a lot of time with Jessica on Thursday. She said she'd be staying with Jessica for a couple of weeks. I knew it would be convenient. Jessica was with her boyfriend without me. It was a mess. On Saturday, just 1 week after our 5th wedding anniversary, my wife left. She packed her belongings and was about to leave. She hesitated. Honey, I don't want to leave. Are you sure we can't find a way to work things out? She pleaded. Please, I want to stay. I love you and I want to improve our marriage. If you loved me, you wouldn't go through with this. I want you to stay, but I can't accept you being intimate with other men while still being my wife. I love you, but I won't tolerate that. I don't think marriage counseling would help. I don't know what else to say. Please leave. I went to the hardware store to buy new locks. I replaced 3 locks and changed the security code for the garage door opener. I stayed home all weekend, hoping she would come back. The next week was very hard. I went to the gym every day and started running again to relieve stress. I felt depressed and wanted to go to Andrea and beg her to come back. I still couldn't understand why my wife left me for another man while we were still married. I felt like a failure. I turned to the internet. I was surprised to learn that about 40% of married people cheat. Even more surprising is that nearly 90% of them stay in their marriages. This is often because the other spouse is willing to tolerate the infidelity, especially when children are involved. Many wives who cheat say they still love their husbands. Many men and women in marriages seek excitement outside the marriage. They feel their marriages lack excitement. Many women who have affairs say their homes demand a lot of effort. The daily tasks of maintaining a family make sex and intimacy with their husbands seem dull. They yearn for excitement with a lover who focuses solely on them. After sex, perhaps the key to a successful marriage lies in treating one's wife well. I thought about trying to pick up my wife at the club she and Jessica frequented. People have affairs for various reasons. Sometimes women cheat to salvage their marriages. Researchers studying marital infidelity have reported this. Marriage is complex and relationships require effort. Open marriages where both spouses consent to having other relationships and sexual partners seldom survive in the long run. Polyamorous marriages are equally complicated, especially when children are involved. The threat of introducing a sexually transmitted disease into the relationship is a constant concern. Personally, I believe monogamy is the best approach in a marriage. If both partners don't agree, they should reconsider their commitment to each other. I looked for different individuals to be in a relationship with. Did I neglect my wife? Did I push her away? Did I fail to provide her with enough attention? Did I focus on building a life for us? Was I mistaken? I'm uncertain, but I felt unhappy about my wife leaving our home to engage in extramarital affairs. She sought things she believed I wasn't providing, but I didn't see her actions leading to an improvement in our marriage. The following week passed by slowly. I didn't call my wife. Andrea only sent one text asking me to forward her mail to her new address. She didn't want to save our marriage. She was looking for a boyfriend. I thought about going to her apartment to find out who she was meeting. I drove past it several times, but I didn't go in. I realized I couldn't subject myself to that. I needed to let her make her decision. With each passing day, the likelihood of her returning diminished. The longer the situation dragged on, the less inclined I was to take her back. A month had passed with minimal communication between us. When Andrea showed up at the house unannounced, I answered the door. Andrea came to the house. I asked her what she wanted. She said she needed to get some things she left behind when she moved in with Jess. This visit wasn't about seeing me. It was about business. She didn't seem to care about the pain she was causing. Was she naive or deluded to think I wouldn't care about her sexual encounters with other men? There are some boxes in the garage with your things that I gathered from around the house. Why did you do that? I let her inside since it was still partly her home. We proceeded to. The garage was filled with boxes of her belongings. How long will you stay with Jessica? I asked. She said, Jessica's been really supportive. I'll be with her for a bit longer. I'll be back as a better wife and we can start a family. I rolled my eyes and felt disgust. Could her being with other men make her a better wife and mother? I had different ideas. Have you found a boyfriend? I asked. Andrea blushed. I already knew. She and Jessica have been on dates with guys from the club. I couldn't resist asking more. How's the sex with your new boyfriend? Andrea turned red and started looking through the boxes. I left and went back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, she came out with a big bag and looked around. She thought the house would be messy, but it wasn't. I had a cleaning crew come 3 times a week, so it was clean. No dirty dishes, empty beer bottles, or dirty laundry. The house was in perfect order. I was focused on keeping myself composed despite my wife leaving me for other men. Is there anything else you need to know, Andrea? I asked. Have you been okay since I started staying with Jess? I'm fine. I've been busy with work. Am I getting out at all? She asked. I've been trying to keep myself busy. I joined a cycling group that meets twice a week for 40 to 60 miles. It's been quite enjoyable. I've met many new people. We usually go for a beer and a burger after riding. I've lost 15 pounds in recent weeks. Regular exercise was the only thing that helped. She responded with interest in my activities. I gathered she wanted to know if I had started meeting other women. As Andrea drove away, she might have realized her plan wasn't unfolding as she'd anticipated. Her quest to find a boyfriend to compensate for the attention. She thought her husband had failed her. I later found out that Andrea had been dating 2 men from the club she went to with Jessica. She had sex with both men on multiple occasions. Neither of them wanted to get to know her better. They were just using her for sex. It was a classic case of pump and dump. I was ready to move on from my marriage. Andrea had not contacted me for weeks. She was free to pursue her desires. She was not interested in returning home. She had gone on vacation with one of her boyfriends. During the school break, they went on a sun-soaked getaway. They were supposedly working on their tans and other indulgences. If this was her idea of strengthening our marriage through infidelity, it didn't work. Jessica had made me look like a neglectful husband. Andrea believed her. She left me for a divorced friend. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Andrea's reputation was falling when her mother found out she'd gone to the Caribbean with another man. She asked me why we'd split up. I told her my daughter had left me for other men. She didn't believe me. I told her to ask her daughter about it. She did. Her conversation with Andrea. Why did you leave home? What's going on between you and Robert? Is he mistreating you? Andrea replied, No, Mom. He isn't mistreating me, but he doesn't excite me like I want. I need to feel desired and attractive. I'm looking for that feeling elsewhere for now. I want to have fun before Rob and I start a family. I'll go back to him when we start a family. A few months and he'll appreciate me more. Everything will be fine. You'll see. Andrea's mother was taken aback by her response. She warned, If you cheat on Robert, he won't want you as his wife. Cheating is the fastest way to end your marriage. I know Rob loves me, Andrea replied confidently. I'll return home in a few months, perhaps a year at most. Then, we'll start a family. Come home now, or there won't be a marriage or a husband to return to. Do you understand? I am confident that Rob loves me. Her mother implored, but her efforts failed. Therefore, I resolved to move on. It had been about 3 months since Andrea left. I needed to move on. I asked a woman I knew from cycling out on a date. I wanted female companionship and a break from my boring routine. My daily routine was work, the gym, cycling, and sleep. I was waiting for this madness to end. I hoped Andrea would come home, but I knew she probably wouldn't. She seemed to be enjoying her freedom and seeking excitement and validation. This echoed the reason psychologists attribute to married women who cheat on their husbands. I decided to arrange a date with someone from my cycling group. I wanted to get to know them before inviting them on a date. I wanted it to be a genuine connection, not a pity date. Most of my cycling friends knew about my separation from my wife. I suspected that some might even know about Andrea's dating life. I asked Diane, one of the women in the group, to join me for tea or a drink. She accepted. I suggested going out on a Saturday night to a nice place and kayaking on a nearby lake before dinner. I had kayaked a few years back, so I knew the ropes. Diane had never kayaked, but she was interested, so we agreed on the plan. We had a great time kayaking for about 3 hours. Then we went to a restaurant for dinner. I had beer with steak and fries, and Diane had white wine with pasta. We finished the night with ice cream and I drove her home. I told her I had a fantastic time and I was going to give her a she kissed me on the lips. It was a nice surprise. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I waited until our regular Tuesday cycling date to ask her out again. She said I seemed happy, but I told her I had a great time. We scheduled a Saturday date. I asked Diane out for a round of golf. I read that men who text or call too much seem needy, so I texted her on Friday to say I was excited for our game and suggested a time for me to pick her up. She kindly requested that I pick her up. We decided on an early afternoon time. Our golf game was fun, even though we're not professional golfers. We had dinner at my place, where we had a barbecue and a bottle of wine. As the night grew late, I was going to drive her home, but she took the car keys, put them on the kitchen counter, and asked to see the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up next to a woman with her arm around me. Diane had long dark hair, green eyes, and flawless skin. She stood tall at around 5 feet 11 inches and weighed around 140 pounds. She was in great shape and worked as a nurse in the pediatric department of the hospital. She came across as authentic and drew me to her. We met for breakfast and talked about my plans and the possibility of divorce. It was a sensitive topic, but I understood her need to know my intentions before investing emotionally in our connection. I explained the peculiar way Andrea had justified her departure to Diane, and her expression confirmed what I had already suspected. She believed Andrea wasn't. I contacted my lawyer and had her assign an investigator to the case. I wanted to determine how many men Andrea was involved with before presenting her with divorce papers. It turned out she was dating multiple men, mostly married, and they would often gather at Jessica's apartment to continue their partying after leaving various bars and clubs around the city. 2 weeks later, Andrea received the divorce petition. That night was the start of a difficult time. My wife came to my house to talk. She was upset. I asked her why she was there. She said a man had delivered documents to her. I told her I would be home soon. I invited her in and asked her to take a seat in the kitchen. It's a bit late for that. I told you when you left that I didn't want you to go, but you went anyway. She tried to explain, "Honey, I needed to find out who I was and feel good about myself." I interrupted with sarcasm. "So, do you feel good about yourself now? Are you validated as a woman? Have you explored your sexuality in new relationships? Have you met exciting people? Have you had your fair share of intimate encounters growing agitated?" I continued because it sure looks to me like you have. I've had virtually no communication from you since you left. You didn't even call me on my birthday. Probably too busy with one of your boyfriends in the Dominican Republic that week. Your mother called me wondering why you didn't call her on Mother's Day. Have you spent this entire time pursuing physical pleasure? She pleaded. "Honey, I love you very much and I realize I may have. I'm coming home today." "No, you're not. This is my house. You're in violation of the court order. Leave now. We'll address this in court." Andrea was realizing the seriousness of our wedding vows, which included fidelity. I made it clear to her that this house meant nothing to me. If she wanted it, fine. It's almost paid off, so my half is worth about $150,000. She could have it for that. But if she didn't want to pay, we'd sell it and split the money. It was simple. But she wasn't moving back while I stayed in the house. I took her to the door and left her there. We avoided a court appearance and settled our divorce. Andrea got half of our assets. We sold the house and I moved on. Andrea resumed her routine, but I heard from a friend that her school advised her to keep her personal life more discreet. Some parents had become aware of her involvement with multiple men and were uncomfortable with her. Some of the fathers might have been her lovers. Andrea was diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease. It was not life-threatening, but she had to abstain for a year. She was already pregnant, so it was not a big concern. It seemed that one of her partners had fathered the child. She was negligent in taking her birth control pill, drinking alcohol, and not using condoms. The father was unidentified but resembled one of Andrea's teachers. He was married. My divorce was official and I was free from Andrea. It's been about a year since the trouble with Andrea began. I bought a new house, got a promotion, and most importantly, Diane and I are now living together. We're excited to announce 2 things. We're getting married this summer, and we're expecting a baby around Christmas.